right, Joe Speak Podcast. I always say I've got a good one, but I never lie. So here's another one that's really important. Attorney Brian Buckmire, who has I met through Law and Crime. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you remember, he hosted the first show that I was ever on Law and Crime a couple years ago. He's been a public defender in New York City for a long time and has written an incredibly timely book called Come Home Safe. It's a novel, but it just screams truth in a lot of ways. So I'm thrilled to have Brian with me today. Brian, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good, man. It's better that I'm here with you now, Joe.
Oh, my gosh. So let's talk about it. I mean, I see an biographical element in this, because the dad in the story is a public defender, is a lawyer, etc. Tell us about your own experience and career and how it connected to you pursuing this creative side and putting this book out.
So, as you said, I guess as of last week, I'm actually a former public defender.
Okay.
I just left the office, going to probably do my own thing for a bit, but the book comes from that experience. I graduated law school in 2014. I went to Queens College in New York for about 3 years, an undergrad. And the reason why I give you those times and those dates, I was in New York during stop and frisk.
Sure.
And when you are a 6 foot plus black man with a short haircut, you inevitably match the description.
Yeah.
And so being stopped and questioned, being stopped and frisked while on the subway, walking through the streets, that was not a peculiar thing. Luckily for me, I was pretty articulate. I was going to law school at one point. And so when they see the way I move and the way I speak, my interactions weren't as high profile as what's in the book, and they weren't as high profile as what I've seen my clients go through. And so the book is a culmination of my experiences, especially that of my clients. But what really got this book going was my now 22-year-old brother a few years ago when he came to me and he said, Brian, public defender, host of Law and Crime, ABC News legal contributor. The relationship between us, because we're 12 years apart, it straddles that of brother and father in many times because we have different fathers, and his father is around, but not in the picture in the way that we want. And so he asked me this question, not rhetorically, but saying, hey, you taught me how to shave, you bought me my first suit, you are this man in my life. How do I, and his words were, not become the next hashtag? And so this book was my research project of trying to answer that question.
Incredible. So tell me, how long did it take for you to put this together? And, so many of us lawyers, we have a creative side, right? And, I've pursued it in different ways myself. Don't have the book out yet, but stay tuned. Maybe you can interview me once I write mine. But tell me how long it took you to actually, birth this thing, for lack of a better term, and get it over the finish line.
If we're going to use birth, from conception to birth, it was probably 2 hours. 2 hours. 2 years. I wish it was 2 hours.
I'm like, whoa, that's fast, bro.
I was moving. No, 2 years. And I think what really made it difficult to write and what probably made it a good book is, we were talking about this a little before, the father in the book is a public defender. Right. The children are named Olive and Reed. My late grandmother is named Olive Reed. My son, who is 6 months old and born now, is named Reed. I had to change the name of the son in the book to R-E-E-D because my son is R-E-I-D. Wow. So in writing this book, I am writing of my children. I am writing of what they could go through. And there were times where I knew what I was going to write. I knew the next 4 or 5 pages, but me writing that my son is getting handcuffed, it took me weeks because I had to keep walking away and then coming back and walking away and coming back.
It's just amazing. You are going to have this unique perspective. You have this unique perspective as an attorney doing work that directly comes in contact with the subject matter. As a black man, on so many levels, you connect to this and you relate to this. So, and the other thing that I see is even some of our friends from Law and Crime, I see them posting about the book, particularly what they've learned from it. So tell us how this really connects and how amazing it is that it's a real thing. I mean, this is not exactly something that you get to dramatize, write about and then put down. It still permeates every part of your being.
Yeah, I would say that I maybe watered it down. I didn't even dramatize it. I tried to make it as simple as possible, that these are real events. And I won't give away the story, but it's two different stories, one being my son with the protagonist and my daughter being the protagonist in the other. And these are real life things that we know happens. These are good officers, bad officers. I put in the whole mix, right? And I think what connects everyone to this is you are either a parent or a child of a parent. No matter race, socioeconomic status, whatever it is, you are either someone's child at one point in time, or you are the parent of someone. And I think it is very universal to the concept of, I want my child to come home safe. Like even the title. And so what I did is this is not the brainchild of just me. This is, and Joe, I'm gonna say this now. There's a second book that I'm working on that's still going through the mind.
Wow.
And I'm gonna come to you to interview you, because I interviewed about 20 to 25 parents, regardless of race, but we're within the criminal justice system. And I said, what are you telling your children? How are you having this conversation? Have your children ever been in this situation? And what's the conversation you had afterwards? Court officers, judges, former prosecutors, defense attorneys, civil rights attorneys. That was all the people I spoke with that I knew in the Brooklyn criminal justice system. Clerks, sorry. And I said, let's put a book together with all of our knowledge. And that's what you have there next to you.
Wow, that's incredible. So what's incredible about this, a lot of things are incredible about it, and I can't say enough about it, and I appreciate you doing it and doing this book and taking this on. This is a great bridge to the talk, right? The talk. And here's one thing that's interesting is a lot of people out here that still don't know what the talk is, okay? But Joe Biden was talking about it, in the State of the Union last week. So, we're mainstream now, the existence of the talk. But give us some practical knowledge about how this book can actually help people to have the talk with their kids, but also for those that are out of that box and never deal with it, to understand that the talk exists.
So I'll go backwards. First, people out of the box and understanding it. And the way I bridge the gap for people is I have a son, okay? He is biracial. There's going to be certain conversations. If we take even race out of it, we all know there are certain conversations that I have to have with my son, for example, about consent, right? If he ends up being a straight man and he wants to take a woman on a date and he wants to kiss her or more than that, we all know the birds and the bees. We also know that conversation is very different for you, for example, who has a daughter, right? And we are all okay with that. We all understand. I might not tell my son, hey, if you go to a bar, and I have a brother and a sister. When I tell my brother, when you go to a bar, you have to make sure you're responsible for the people around you. You're a big man, make sure everyone's safe. I'm not telling my brother, if someone wants to buy you a drink, make sure you walk up to the bar, see the person pour the drink, take the drink, thank them for the drink, and then drink it. I say, if one of your homeboys or one of your boys want to buy you a drink, let them buy you a drink and then just whatever. Right. But for my sister, if someone wants to buy my sister a drink at the bar, I say you walk yourself over to the bar, you let that person buy you a drink, you watch the bartender pour that drink, take that drink from the bartender, and now you may enjoy the drink. And we know why I have that difference between the two. And we accept the difference between the two based on gender. And so I say, if you can understand that based on gender, let me welcome to the world the differences based on race.
Right.
And that's how I have that conversation.
Fantastic. So talk a little bit about, I know who Brian Buckmire is, and a lot of people know who Brian Buckmire is. But, in New York City, you can still be very anonymous. You walk up the street, you get on the train, you do your thing. Give folks a little bit of a primer on how, even as a suited and booted Black man, accomplished on television and in court on a daily basis, that this thing, this race thing, this profiling thing, fill in the blank, how it still shows up for you and for us on a daily basis.
What I tell my brother is, It is not who I am, but what people see. I know who I am. And Joe, you and I have had a drink together. We laugh, we joke, we this. And when I explain that to some people who are like, but Brian, you're a clown. You're so loving. You're giving. I sometimes walk around with singles in my pockets just to give to homeless people because I'm like, hey, if I see a homeless person with a dog, I'm a dog person. If I see a homeless vet, my uncle was a vet. I want to help them out. And they're like, but Brian, why would anyone assume that of you? And I've done this with some of my friends, and I say, give me a second. I take the jacket off. I take the tie off. I sag my pants just a little. I put on a hoodie and I put on a hat and I say, now what? And they're like, Brian, I get it. Because I can't, and I tell this to my brother and I hate having to tell him this. You cannot walk around and expect people to judge you based on your character until they see it. They are not going to know who you are, but they will know what you are. And unfortunately, not everyone's going to treat a 6'4", 220-pound black man in a certain outfit the same. When I go to buy gifts for my wife, if I want to buy her something expensive or nice, get her a purse or a jacket, I know what kind of outfit I have to wear when I go into that store to be treated a certain way, because they're not going to know the zeros in my bank account, but they're going to know the color of my skin. When I go on a flight, I always pack a jacket with me because I know they're not going to be like, Brian Buckmire from ABC wants to go fly. No, they're going to be like, oh, this black man is flying. I don't know if I can wear the hoodie, but I know the jacket affords me a certain level of respect and dignity.
Right. Wow. That's huge. And that's real. I love the idea that this book can start conversations. I tell people all the time that things don't change because you saw person X or person Y on television. It's just that you actually had a conversation about what you saw on television or about what you read or about what went on at school today or whatever else with people that you trust, people that you have some equity with, right? People that you have some goodwill with, where you can trust what they say and you will listen to what they say. Even if you don't necessarily agree with it, even if it's something new, and even if it has the potential to beg change or to seek change. So let's talk about how this book can really prepare us and prepare kids for reaction with police, parents to have conversations with kids about how we react. Maybe kids even to tell people they try, I never told you that this happened, but here's X, Y, or Z happened. Let's talk about some of the hope that we have for conversations that this book can actually inspire.
So the book divided into two stories, one for my son and one for my daughter. But even within each of the stories, you have this arc. You have regular day, right? So, I think the first story is my son taking my daughter home on the subway. He's a freshman, she's in middle school. It's what a lot of people in the country are probably seeing. Like, you're old enough to take your sister home, go do it. Then the police get involved. And the story is built around the idea that we've already had the conversation. We've already talked about the different mechanisms and the things that we should do as a family if you're confronted by the police and your father or your mother are not there. And in the book, you see them struggle and navigate through some of those lessons. Because as you know, as a father, you're ahead of the game than I am. I'm only 6 months in. They listen to what we have to say, but they don't always follow everything. And so there's that struggle. And then I made sure that the end of every story was a conversation between parents and child. It's either father and son or mother and daughter. And it was that conversation of showing the real harm that happens from that interaction. I actually forgot to mention one important person that I interviewed as well. I actually interviewed a former client of mine who was wrongfully accused of possessing a gun, and luckily enough, he was acquitted, but he and I had stayed in touch because of the fear that he has. He almost has agoraphobia, the fear he has of being in outside places because of how he was arrested, how he was treated in the criminal justice system. And some of the words that you hear from my son are him. He talks about how negatively this system affected him, the stress that he went through, explaining to his children that he's innocent, but he has to go to court once a month, and his hopes for a better system. I made sure to put that in the book because I wanted people to see an authentic reality of things that they may have felt and feel an open space that they can speak on as well. Because I find that when we are open and we are vulnerable, it allows other people to be the same.
One of the things that's been great about doing Law & Crime is it's great the legal analysis. It helps you, particularly people that are kind of legal eagles or that are into that kind of conversation. But I love the opportunity to speak to larger issues. Why is this trial going on? Why is this armed robbery thing going on, this George Floyd thing going on? And so I have to take advantage of your background as a commentator and an anchor. Tyre Nichols, bro. I mean, what? Do you know what I mean? Like, where do you even start with that based on what it is that you see on a day-to-day basis, based on your experience as a public defender? Where do we even go with that, and where do we even start? What comes out of your heart first when you see that and when you hear that?
When I think of Tyre Nichols and I see that, I know some people struggle when they're like, well, it's black cops and a black victim, so what then? Racism, sexism, all the isms, at their core is a concept of us and them. Those officers did not see Tyre Nichols as an us. You can go back to any time that humans have treated other humans differently, whether it be mass incarceration, the Holocaust, the genocide in Rwanda. The ability to dehumanize and treat others as less than you makes it dangerously easy to treat them as subhuman. And the unfortunate reality is that our criminal justice system affords that ability at every turn. Well, that person did something that I would never do. That person is from a neighborhood that I would never live in. That person made choices that are not choices that I would make. And as a public defender, for me at least, I don't believe that the worst act a person did should be the defining moment in their life. Are there cases that fit outside of that? Yes. But I do not think that I should take a human being and take the worst act that they did and now treat them as less of a human. Because history has told us where that leads us to. And so in the Tyre Nichols situation, in his death and the way that he died and the way that this Scorpion unit, you don't name the unit Scorpion because they're treating people with dignity, okay? That's first and foremost. But the way that these specialized units, regardless of race, patrol and hunt in many ways young men because they perceive them to be in hot spots. When I found out about the elements that led to Tyre Nichols, I was not surprised because it happens far too often in this country. And I would end off with this. The reason why Tyre Nichols is an issue is because they got the wrong one. If Tyre Nichols was a gangbanger or a rapist or someone who had done something that we would say, he deserved a whooping, we would be fine with it. We would absolutely be fine with it. And so for me, what I tell people is either you're going to have the mentality that we're okay with law enforcement doing this to the right ones, and then we all cry boo-hoo when they get the wrong one, or we say that human is human and we do not treat each other like this regardless of accusations.
Wow, it's huge. So give us the call to action, whether it's the individual who the light came on for the first time when they read Come Home Safe, or the brother that's frustrated. What can we do when we want to help? Maybe we're not in that piece. Maybe somehow this is illuminating for one reason or another, but we're not in that space. But we're sympathetic, but we don't want to be offensive. We want to recognize our privilege or whatever. We're in whatever fill in the blank, and we want to do something, and we don't know what to do because what's going on now in this book, which is so real, it's a novel, but it's so real in so many ways, has moved us and got us thinking. So what do we do?
Empathize. Empathize when the shoes that someone else is wearing don't even fit you. When it's not even a style of shoe that you would wear. I was I had a judge, actually, that I've come before, read the book and message me privately. So I won't say word for word what he said, but it affected me in two different ways. One, he said, this is important. He said, I'm sorry that this is so important, but this is important for this time. And he said that he will spread this book to every colleague and friend and person who has a child, nephew, niece, godson, grandchild, whatever it is. And in one part, I was so warned by that. If this book doesn't sell again, but I changed the mind of this one judge and he was always a compassionate judge. He was always a great judge. I didn't flip one, so to speak, but I think pushed him a little bit more. I'm gonna flip one though. It's gonna come. That to me means this book is successful, regardless of what else happens. But the one thing that kind of hurt a little was he's recommending it to, he did read it himself, which is great, but recommend it to people who you might not think need it. Because it's not just a tool for the people who might have to have this conversation, either to or from someone, but I hope that it's a tool of empathy for people who maybe don't live in a part of the country where this is an issue, or not in a social economic background where this is an issue, or maybe not even in the race where this is an issue. But your empathy helps get us to a place where I want my grandchildren to look at this book and be like, Grandpa, why'd you write this book? This is foolish. We don't need to deal with this anymore. And they're using it as a coaster or they're throwing it around the house. I want this book to be obsolete by the time my grandchildren show up. And so I think empathy is the thing that is the call to action. And I think empathy is what gets us there.
Fantastic. So where do we get it? Where do we pick it up?
Everywhere. So it's online. It's on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles. You can check out your local bookstore as well. If you're in the Baltimore area, February 28th, I'm going to be doing a book signing. Check out my social media, The Buck, ESQ. I'll be posting about it, where I'm going to be. Come-home-safe.com is the website. It's still in this beta, but it's there. We'll be posting about where you can get the book, where you can also check and see where I'll be for book signing. I'm hoping in tomorrow I'm going to be on ABC News Live with Lindsay Davis talking about it, but of course I have to speak with you first, Joe. You're going to hopefully be seeing me everywhere and anywhere, but check online, Come Home Safe by Brian Buckmire. You'll be able to get your order as soon as possible.
Wow. Well, my man, Brian Buckmire, you got a good one here, man, and an important one. I thank you so much for taking the time, coming on the Joe Speak podcast, and just thank you for being you, man. From the host thing to the author thing, you're right there with us all the time. So I thank you, Brian. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you. Thank you for having this platform and elevating this conversation.